My name is Michael Terry Davis, and I live in Vancouver. I was born in Vancouver, and I've been on the coast since the early 80s, on the water since the early 80s. Well, Timac had a couple of it was a family-owned business, and the father had built this thing out of a nothing little, it was like one or two boats when he got it, and by the time I was there, they had a fleet of, I don't know, 10 or 15 boats. And then his son had come to run it. And he was a bully. He was a real bully. And they'd set up, I can't remember when, but for a couple of years or 3 years, they'd had a Christmas bonus. And so we were getting into December, and the guys were all starting to talk about the Christmas bonus. And all of a sudden, management said, "There's no Christmas bonus this year." And they were like, "What do you mean?" And they said, I can't remember what they said first, but they changed the story. The first time they said, "Wow, there's no profits this year," and the next time they said something else. And so the guys were furious, and they were bitching and complaining, and they had tried to unionize once before, and they had not got there. They'd missed by one or two in the certification vote. And I actually wanted to leave. I wanted to go on the outside boats because you could only build up so much sea time working inside the harbors, and then you had to go outside the harbors to continue to build your sea time if you wanted to be a mate or a skipper or whatever. And so I wanted to go on the outside boats, which meant going union. And so I said, "Well, we could always union." They were like, "Yeah, that's what we should do." And so I went and talked to the CBRT, the Canadian Brotherhood of Railway and Transport Workers. And they were like, "Yeah, we'd love to, take another run at this." And so we spent 6 months getting certified, which we won. And then we had to negotiate a contract. And by the end of the 6 months, I really couldn't tell you which I found more irritating, the management or the staff, because the staff were all like, "Yeah, but when it came to, coming to meetings or doing a strike vote, or they were just terrible. They were just like, it was just unbelievable." We got our first contract signed, and the very next day I quit. Just so he knew it was personal. And the only other gay thing that I remember was a guy that I met through a friend of mine who was, again, he was probably 20 years older than I was, and he had a friend who worked for Kinkham Navigation, which was the maritime arm of Macmillan Bloedel. And it was all, 90% of it was log tows or log barges. And he was a cook, and he was union, would have been the CBRT at the time. And one day the deckhand was sick, and so he was supposed to be the deckhand. And this guy was, he was very skinny, he was very flamboyant, but he was union, so you couldn't, if he had a certain amount of seniority, you couldn't just get rid of him, right? And so I remember the only story I'd ever heard about him working was he was sitting in the wheelhouse, and they were up the river somewhere, and the captain pulled the boat alongside a log tow. And log tows, of course, are held together by boomsticks around the outside, and then there's a very heavy chain with a ring and a toggle, right? And you drop the toggle through the end of the boomstick and through another one, and then you put the toggle through the ring and you flip it, and that's how it holds the whole thing together. And the captain's like, "Okay, go down there and get that chain and put those toggles on that end and put that together." And this guy looked at him and he said, "No," he says, "there's two things I don't do, whips and chains."